welcome to episode 4 of the All Hustle podcast. I'm your host, Bowen, and as always, I'm joined by Daniel.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Marco.
What's up, guys? How are you?
And Abdul.
What's up? What's poppin'?
So we just got finished watching the final 2 episodes of The Last Dance. Kind of bittersweet because we won't be watching any more new episodes coming out, but just want to get some quick takeaways from episodes 9 and 10. Abdul?
I think it was really because so much of debates as far as who's greater than who across different generations revolves around how people view the talent and competition. But I think it was really cool to be able to see how a bit last week's 2 episodes, but also this week's how there were teams that felt they were better, and there were teams that you could argue may have been better, but the Bulls were able to pull it out by way of that championship experience, that veteran experience that we talk about so much of in the NBA, and even in general in sports, as far as certain teams or athletes being able to even if they're down, they're able to get over that hump for whatever adversity they face, just by way of having been in that situation before. Because you saw with the Indiana series, how close they were to losing. And then even in the Utah series where they were given trouble a bit at certain points, but then they were able to pull it out, even though those Utah teams were legit and Karl Malone was just an absolute monster.
I would like to go on that. Karl Malone played really well in that series, in the 2 series. And he had some big games. He's one of the guys that, as we talked in the previous episodes here, he's just underrated because he never beat Jordan, but he was a monster.
Yeah, I mean he was a monster, and yeah, you could argue those Jazz teams were maybe better, but as you said, Jordan just he just had it in him to beat them every time, and it was I wonder if anyone else actually believed that they were going to beat him. I know Reggie talks about oh, we thought we had him, or Jalen Rose, I wonder if anyone actually really was able to think so, because I think Jordan just had this spell on everyone that they never had belief in. Yeah, Malone was great, but as soon as he had the opportunity to maybe beat Jordan, he just completely blew it, and Jordan just owned him in that final 30 seconds of Game 6 in '98, right? And it's kind of LeBron, the kind of spell he had on the East is similar to just what Jordan had on the league. LeBron, even with a bad Cavs team, it's just I don't think anyone believed they'd actually beat him, particularly the Raptors.
I think the closest thing for us is actually LeBron in the East. I think that's a great comparison.
The parallels between remember LeBron shot over OG Anunoby to put him up, and everyone's harping, why don't you double team? I was kind of thinking that when MJ hit the shot on Russell, it's everyone in the stadium, everyone in the whole world watching knew it was going to him. Why don't you throw double, triple, quadruple teams at him, make someone else beat you? And it's the same thing with LeBron. It's in that moment, I don't know what goes through their minds when a great like that has the ball, but I think something just gets in their head that the 101 is the way to go. I don't know. It's so maddening now to watch, but tactics were different back in the day. Maybe Sloan, Russell will eventually stop MJ at this point, but yeah, that was just kind of the biggest thing that I saw. It's double, triple, quadruple team this guy, he's the greatest player in the world.
And for Jackson said that they wanted to roll the play, so they couldn't plan, but still, Jordan has the ball, just go on it. They don't have to plan that, I think that should be automatic. Jordan in the final 20 seconds, put 3 guys on him, whatever.
Yeah, you have Malone at the top too, I think, with Stockton. And it's you could have easily sagged over and you could have left, Pippen or Kerr or someone open. And MJ probably would have shot anyways, but it would have been a more difficult shot.
But would he have, right? Because, they showed it a few times before. He always dished to someone who got the job done.
Which I'd rather let someone else beat you, right? I don't know.
No, I think looking back on that, and I'm surprised it's not talked about more, and it didn't even cross my mind until watching these replays and these episodes. Why was he not doubled? It makes 0 sense.
I love the move by Phil to not call that timeout, though. It kind of put them in a bad spot because now they didn't have a set decision to make or plan defensively. And as you guys said, like you kind of like see it as far as like there isn't really like much of a plan. It's kind of like mano a mano, and Russell ends up losing that matchup.
I feel that way. Like the timeout is so much better for the defense, unless there's like 3 seconds left and you need to draw up a catch and shoot play. Like draw a play of Reggie pushing MJ to get a free shot, you know?
I mean, it's much better if you have Jordan, right? Yeah, I don't have to call a timeout. Jordan will take the ball. Like, if you do not have him, I think it's better for you to make a play or something. But, yeah, having a guy like Michael Jordan or LeBron or Kobe or a clutch guy, yeah, that's
Curry,
very good.
Yeah.
Don't call it a timeout, I know.
Yeah, it's always been a dilemma, you know, with announcers in a game. It's like, do they call timeout? Did they not? Some coaches let it go. And that just has to have your trust in your players. And obviously with MJ, Phil knew that, you know, he was going to get the job done at that stage. So there's a big, you know, part of it was the flu game, or I think it should now be referred to as the food poisoning game, because it was clearly food poisoning. I thought it was quite entertaining to hear 5 delivery men come up and deliver the order. That was definitely fishy, but, you know, he ate the pizza anyways, and it looked like, you know, he was clearly very ill, and that was just an absolutely gutty, incredible game by MJ.
Oh, 100%. Like, the 5, like, I don't know. I feel like it's too late to change the name of the game now, just because the shoes are associated with it. Gotta be the shoes. No, I'm kidding. But like that, and especially like the Pippen playing with his back injury, like it just goes to show like how hard it actually was for the Bulls to actually pull off like that 6th title, especially to not let it go to 7, because like everybody likes to talk about like but Jordan never got to play in a game 7. This and this, like, was it that hard? But like he played 44 minutes in that game, like in the flu game. And then I think he played like, what was it, like 46 minutes in game 6?
Yeah.
Which is like, and he was like 30, and he's 35 years old, like off a 3rd consecutive finals run. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah, when I saw it, so when they were showing the food poisoning game, first of all, the 5 people thing, I just think it's funny because if you're like some pizza guys from Utah and you want to poison Jordan, like, yeah, I guess you're putting some bad meat on this pizza. Why would you send 5 guys if you want to get him to eat this pizza? Sending 5 guys is just super sus. So I don't know.
They should have went with an alias too, like not say it was Michael Jordan's pizza or something, you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
But maybe the guys didn't know, like the cook maybe was the bad guy. I don't know. That's a strange story. I think they should dive more into that. They should do a whole documentary just on that story, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I want proof too.
Investigation or something.
Yeah. Because what you heard before was that it was a hangover game. Like I was hearing a lot about that in the past few years. Now all of a sudden it's a pizza. I don't know.
Those jokes were flying.
But for Pippen, so they showed Jordan like doing everything he can on his flu game, and then they show Scotty talking about it, and I was like, this is a funny contrast between Pippen's migraine game and
I thought about that too while I was watching it.
MJ's flu game, and I'm like, man, Scotty, you're saying like MJ did whatever he could, and I'm like, you're looking kind of soft here, man. But then they show Scotty in his injured back game, and I'm like, okay, never mind. Scotty wasn't soft, but I thought that for a second there, I was like, oh, it's not looking good.
He looked half crippled.
I imagine today Scotty would not play, you know. He just didn't look like he should be up at that moment. He should be in a hospital bed right now. You know? And he played. That was really tough.
He'd grab a rebound, and it was almost like he was about to fall to his knees.
Yeah. I'm also more suspect, I guess, when I hear about these like flu games. I'm kind of like, I don't know how legit this is, right? Because, you know, like the media can hype up a lot of things. Like you guys probably remember Paul Pierce being wheeled out on a wheelchair, coming back running and like, let's go. And everyone thought it was this big deal. So watching that whole time, I'm thinking like, yeah, but was it that bad? Was it that bad? And like, at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, it had to have been that bad. Like, I don't think MJ would have kind of made it up more than it was. And that's the same with Scotty's back injury. Initially, I was thinking, was it even that bad? But clearly, when he was hobbling down the court and you're still able to, be a big part of that team. And then I thought it was funny that Jerry Sloan didn't even know that MJ was sick.
I was wondering about that. Do you think
so
he really
over
didn't
the
know?
culture story?
I think he was joking.
Yeah.
I don't know if it didn't seem like he was joking, but it seemed like he didn't want to admit that he just lost to a guy who was sick,
Yeah. No, I definitely get what you mean. Like, also, it's a little harder. I guess you could go with it both ways because, like, back then, like, news didn't, like, fly around as quickly as it can now.
That's true.
Like, you'd have to be watching TV or you'd have to be reading the newspaper. Like, whereas now, like, I could just go anywhere I want to find certain news. Like, phone, TV, like, laptop, like, name it. Maybe he didn't know.
So someone with the Jazz must have heard.
I'm sure he knew.
And like,
but
the pregame announcing was, you heard Bob Costas saying like, "Oh, he was sick. He was suffering from the flu this morning." Blah blah blah. So
yeah,
should have carried over. And then, as a team, if you hear someone's sick, you should attack that guy. If like Pippen was injured, why don't you like look to attack him every possession?
But would their game plan have changed?
Yeah, that's
like, okay, he's sick, so I guess we're not going to double him now. I think you still would, right?
Yeah, that's a fair. So at the end of episode 10, they had a little brief, text about the breakup of the Bulls after the 1998 season. Scotty was traded to Portland. Kerr traded to San Antonio, where he won 2 more rings. MJ retired and then came back later. Phil retired temporarily, came back and won 5 championships with LA. And then Rodman was released, and he only played 30 more games over 2 seasons. So do you guys think, had they have stayed together, they would have won another? Or were the role players getting too old and the grind of the postseason was just too much for the star players?
Well, I think like you gotta look into the 1999 NBA Finals. Spurs and Knicks. Spurs won. Tim Duncan was like really, really young, and he was the Finals MVP. I don't know. I think they had a shot, but they were exhausted in the series against the Jazz. They were completely exhausted. There was nothing left. Like just from seeing the games, there was nothing left.
I think I could see where Jordan's coming from as far as at least giving it a shot.
Yeah.
But it's hard to debate like the reasoning being like the aging roster. Like, because Rodman was like the oldest one and he was 38 like when they won that last one.
Wow.
Or 37. One of those two. Jordan was 35, like Pippen was 33, Kerr was 33 or 34. Like, their main core of guys, like between role players and stars, were aging. And like our idea of longevity now is different from what it was then, of course. Like now guys could play at that age and it's not really like questioned much. But like, because a lot of those guys are in like better shape, everyone's like playing like the resting game, this and this. But like back then it was like totally different. They're coming off like 3 straight finals runs. And like aside from Jordan, like some of the other guys who were still on the team when he first retired, like they made 2 deep playoff runs in between as well. Like, so I could see where management would have wanted to break it up. Also, Phil said he wanted to take a break. I don't know if there was any convincing of Phil to like actually come back for a 4th run at it. But yeah, I don't know. Like that Spurs team they were so young, and David Robinson was like that vet guy. He kind of gets lost in the conversation of like bigs from the 90s, but like he was up there with the rest of them because he was a league MVP and a champ, everything. But between Robinson and Duncan, the Spurs would have been a lot to deal with for not only an aging team, but like also exhausted team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they would have won the 7th, maybe even the year after. I don't know, but like the fact that they just let the team go is pure
without at
insanity.
least trying. Yeah.
Like, you have Michael Jordan. He's still the best player. Like, why aren't you doing everything you can to keep him? Like, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to have a guy like that playing for you, even once in 5 lifetimes maybe. So, just makes no sense to me. And like, you're in a rush to rebuild,
and they're still rebuilding.
Yeah, like they end up with a series of draft picks that are bad. I mean, they drafted Elton Brand first overall in '99, and I mean, Elton Brand, really good player, but they end up trading him in 2001 for Brian Skinner and the draft rights to Tyson Chandler, because they thought Tyson Chandler was going to be the next Kevin Garnett. No disrespect to Tyson, who had a great career, but that obviously wasn't the case. And then you have like they drafted Marcus Fizer, Eddie Curry, Jay Williams, who like went down to injury, Kurt Heinrich. It's like, just because you're like, oh, we need to rebuild, well, doesn't mean you're going to find a generational talent.
Their one hit was Derrick Rose, and even then that fell apart due to injuries too.
And that wasn't until 2008. So that's 10 years later. It's like, I don't know. Once you have something that's so good, why break it up?
Yeah, the feeling is that the Bulls have been like the last 2 decades, they have just been paying the price for having that team. It just feels to me, because obviously they had D Rose, they went to conference finals. And in 2015, they were up against the Cavs. Like when Rose hit a buzzer beater in game 3, Bulls were up against the Cavs. No Kyrie, no Kevin Love. Like maybe the Bulls can make it to the finals. Then they fall in 6 games and like nothing since that. It just feels to me that they're paying the price. It's kind of strange, but I don't know.
Jordan has a spell on them. No, but like jokes aside, like I don't know, like it's kind of like to what Daniel said, like as far as like the idea of having a generational talent, like it's really hard to hit on those. Like we've seen a lot of teams like miss on some really great players with the idea of like maybe this guy will be better than this one. Seen it happen to Portland.
Jason Tatum on the ball.
There's that one too. He could have been a nice fit in Philly, but like it happens so much. But you have to like take advantage of like your time. Like it would almost be like if the Lakers chose to just break it up by like LeBron's 3rd year after winning like a ring or 2, right? It's kind of like, what can we like? You'd question what else could they have milked out of this, considering LeBron's prime seems to be just timeless.
Yeah, it's a different like time as well, right? Player empowerment era is kind of taken over, but I know when you win a championship, you have that disease of more, as all these role players think, I should get paid a little bit more, I should get these longer term deals. But yeah, as you're saying, Danny, I don't think that was the case. I think it was just management was dead set on just getting rid of all these players, when I think Kerr would have been happy to sign a minimum 1-year deal. Pippen might have been happy to maybe take a 1 year. And Phil, like as MJ was saying, if they wanted to go for 7, I mean, why not? You guys just won 3 straight.
Well, even like on the first episode, they bring up that like Jerry Krause didn't feel like he was getting credit, and he talks about how it's a great organization. And so it seems like he wanted to prove that I don't need Jordan. I can build championship teams myself. But the fact that like Jerry Reinsdorf just lets that slide is crazy to me. Like if you're an owner and you have Michael freaking Jordan, why would you ever let that go?
Yeah, it's also so hard to rebuild when you're not going to get the same for these players because they're older. So their trades, you're kind of, you're not going to get the same kind of peep back, and you don't have a young star waiting in the rings, that you can build around once they're gone. Kukoc was, I think, 30 at that time.
Yeah.
So even him, he wasn't even that young. So then you have to go through draft picks, and you have to be a good trading team, and yeah, that's like virtually impossible. at that stage.
Rebuilds are so much harder than like people may want to admit sometimes. Like, because like especially when it comes to like draft picks, but like also like the team's ability to develop players. Like it's so hit or miss, right?
Yeah,
like,
ask the Phoenix Suns.
I was gonna talk about the Phoenix Suns.
They've only hit on 2 picks.
And the Andrew are pretty good, but it doesn't work.
Like
biggest face pop, man. Oh,
Phoenix hasn't made the playoffs since Kobe and the Lakers eliminated them. I think it was back in 2010.
2010, yeah. 2010.
They haven't made the playoffs since then. Like,
yeah,
they got one more year out of Steve Nash, and then he was allowed to walk, and then after that, like, it's just been a mess.
Goran Dragic.
And that's from like ownership, though, right? Because you've heard all these stories of them wanting to draft a certain player, but Robert Sarver is like, no, I want this guy. You know, why? And it's frustrating. I'm sure it's infuriating to be in that front office realizing that this guy doesn't know basketball. You know, he's a great businessman, but you can't get that involved in a team and expect to do well when you don't have the basketball expertise to.
We're talking about the Phoenix Suns or the Knicks, just for me to like.
Both, yeah.
Oh, that too.
You know, like, and you kind of go back to like San Antonio and how they've always been in lockstep with each other. You know, the owner's gonna say, okay, like, you guys can make these decisions because I'm happy with it, and I'll have final say in some things, but I trust my GM abilities, my coach's abilities, my trainer's abilities to get the best out of these specific players. And even with the Mavericks, you know, Mark Cuban was super involved, but he wasn't, you know, I don't think he was super like Robert Sarver, like vetoing deals and stuff. I think Cuban realized that, you know, I don't know as much about basketball as my GM.
Cuban got a little lucky too, though, because he let Nash walk, and then eventually he ended up being able to get a ring with a really older group.
It's true.
Yeah, that's fair. That was a gutty championship run.
It was, and he got lucky for that one, because I don't know how people would. I don't know, like, if the feeling would be exactly the same, considering everyone knows he's involved if they didn't win that ring. But yeah, like, front offices could really ruin teams, especially if you don't have like a proper setup as far as like who makes certain decisions and how things will actually like be run and structured like within the organization. Like, Krause wasn't wrong as far as saying like the organization, like the structure of it obviously like builds like the winning culture that you have, right? But like you still have to like understand like the players are the ones who are actually playing. Like, they're there for a reason. You're not on the floor for a reason either, right? And like, I like how Jordan gave him his credit. Oh no, sorry, it was Pippen. Pippen gave him his credit at the end of the last episode, as far as him being arguably the greatest GM ever, which can be debated. But he assembled really great teams, and they were really successful. Like, they three-peated twice, which is like insane. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like part of that is why like it makes the Bulls and like Jordan like kind of puts them in a different aura from other teams, because like they got 6 rings in 2 goes pretty much.
Yeah.
And to add to your point, like, they got the 6 rings with like obviously MJ and Pippen, but some people are kind of overrating Dennis Rodman impact, because Rodman was great, don't get me wrong, but he was like 2 times an All-Star, you know? He was not a superstar in his own right, so it wasn't like the Golden State Warriors that had 4 stars, you know? And so the pieces were all right in the Bulls team, so that's also, I believe, a GM, like that's on the GM, that's on Jerry Krause, you know?
And coaching too, like when they showed his little WWE excursion, and Phil kind of knew that whatever happens, he's gonna play 100%. And you know, I don't think any other coaches would have been okay with that. And clearly, that's what he needed to do in some weird way. But he performed every time, basically out on the court. He gave it his all.
The conversation about Phil changed after this last dance. He's a big winner, I think, because the most recent stuff we talked about was him and his stuff with blowing it with the Knicks and talking about LeBron's posse. And now after this documentary, I think everyone's reminded, like, Damn, Phil, greatest coach of all time.
Yeah, it just feels to me like Phil never gets surprised. Oh, Rodman went to fight in the WWE event. Yeah, okay. Next game, let's go.
Yeah.
I don't know. He just seems like, yeah, everything's all right. Let's just move on.
Phil's ability to deal with players is crazy to me. Like as far as like the players that he's coached and like the egos that he's had to like bring together as a team, like he coached the Bulls 6 titles, like the Kobe and Shaq pairing, and then Kobe's last 2 rings. Like the amount of like players and teams that he's like come across and like had to put together and to be that successful in like like a 20, trying to think, became coach of the Bulls in 89, 88, and then left the Lakers around 2011, about like 23-year span, somewhere there.
Yeah, with a year off, I think, so.
We'll say like 21 years.
I think it was 3 years off because I think he wasn't in Los Angeles like in 2006 and 2007, was he?
Yeah.
No, that was 04, 05.
Oh, he took a break after the Shaq and Kobe.
He took 1 year. And then there's the 1 year. Yeah, the 1 year between the Bulls and the Lakers. But so about 21 years. But to win 11 rings in like 2021 season is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like you could say he got lucky because he had MJ and Kobe, but at the same time, you still got to win. And I think he's allowed a mulligan on his New York Knicks tenure because he wasn't a coach. He was a lot older, and he had to deal with James. Yeah, you have to deal with James Dolan on a daily basis. It's probably not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I have decided that the Knicks failures are completely on like the organization. It's not on the players, not on the coaches. Like it's just on the organization, on GM. Because the Knicks have been the most valuable franchise for like 10 years now, and they can't put up a competitive team.
They haven't won since '73.
Yeah.
So there's a cool part in the episodes about Steve Kerr. I mean, I didn't know this going in about. First off, he was born in Beirut, Lebanon, and obviously his dad was this great professor and leader. That was just a very impactful story. I never knew about what his father did, like the teachings that him and his mother had, him and Steve Kerr's mother and father had on him, and just heartbreaking, getting shot. While he was, I think it was in the 80s, so I think he was right in college. He said he was in his dorm, so he was right in college, and to be able to take what he's learned from his family and kind of translate it into his coaching career, I think was really unique because when he got hired on, I don't think a lot of people gave him his due as a good coach. I mean, one, he took over for like a great team on the Warriors, but what he was able to do on that Warriors team, definitely he took a lot from his parents, took a lot from Phil, took a lot from, Popovich, and, he became one of the best coaches now, I think.
Yeah, I think it's cool to see how like that fueled him so much more into like actually becoming like a pro basketball player, and like how much more serious he took it, but it was like a therapeutic thing for him as far as like how he dealt with it. Because like people have like everyone has like their why as to why they do certain things. His like because of his status as like a player and like how he was seen, as far as like him being like this role player who won 5 rings on 2 like great dynasty teams or franchises. But like as far as like understanding the story and like how it actually like came to be was like touching, but also really cool. Like as far as being able to learn like more about him, whereas usually like he wouldn't be someone that people would like look up and try to figure out his story as much.
And what I was gonna say, like he was coached by arguably the 2 best coaches of all time.
Yeah,
I think he was the only player to be coached by both of them.
Yeah,
like my memory doesn't fail. I think so. Yeah,
Robert Horry.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But he's bounced around.
But yeah, I mean that was a great part. I'd heard of Kerr's dad being shot. I didn't know that they were gonna go there though, and I didn't realize it was in the way that was the way it happened, and there was a lot of emotional stuff about fathers just in this whole documentary.
Yeah. So finally, our thoughts on the impact of this documentary, and was this kind of the best documentary series you guys have watched? I know it's probably the longest because not too many other ones have 20 hours of episodes and stuff. But yeah, what are you guys' thoughts?
I felt like this was like a power move for Jordan as far as like being able to like remind, like not only maybe remind people who watched like a little bit like in the past and got to see him, but like for those of us who didn't get to see it, like he touched like two generations at least of people who didn't get to watch him. Like there are players in the league who never got to watch him, and like they just know of him as being like considered the greatest, but like they never got to like we all never got to witness it. You know what I mean? And like the docu-series is like so well put together that like you almost like I almost felt like you were a part of, like you were there watching it like for yourself like in that time, and you kind of like got an idea of the aura of like Jordan and what it was to be like Jordan-esque and like all those things, but also like impacts like the way we see and like rank players as far as like for the generations who never got to watch them, because all we got to see is like maybe YouTube highlights, stat sheets, and like accolades. But like with the docu series, it's almost like we got to see like the person he was, what it took for him to be able to do that, and like everything that he did, and like just like the way people viewed him from that time. Like for those who got to cover him, those who got to watch him, play with him, like everything. And like I don't know, I feel like it just changes everything as far as the conversation around Jordan and like how he's viewed, especially by our generation.
Yeah, I mean,
and the timing was great, right? Like nobody, like everybody just watching every Sunday. Maybe like a worldwide event every Sunday, or Monday for us. But and I think what I love about his doc is like how he shows him as a human being, but also as a myth. They do the both sides really well. I think it was bona fide perfect. There was nothing I would like to change. I think we all knew a lot of what they showed about championships and stuff, but we also learned a lot of things that we never thought we would. So I think it just made what was the promise. It was great, and everyone's talking. And we're gonna have more of those, like maybe the Kobe Shaq situation. That'll be very touching because of Kobe passing, and maybe even the Warriors one day. That I think that might be its biggest legacy. Start a wave of documentaries on sports that are, I don't know, like bigger than ESPN 30-for-30, which is really good, for example, but like to a wider audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that. I mean, it was really well done, and I loved the whole thing, and it was good timing. Not only what you were talking about, but also just when all this LeBron hype is going on. It's Jordan reminding, I'm the greatest. Going in though, I thought Jordan was the greatest anyways, like before watching this. But I think you're right, Abdul, about like a lot of people in our generation think LeBron's the GOAT. I still see arguments about that on Twitter and stuff. But I definitely think it changed people's minds. In terms of the power move by Jordan, I think it absolutely was. But this was done by Jordan, right? So that's something we have to consider in this series. I wonder what the series would have looked like if it was done from an unbiased standpoint. I think maybe it could have been better in that way, because we did learn things, and like there were some scenes where you thought, maybe Jordan's an asshole, but there wasn't anything that bad, and there wasn't that much stuff that was completely unheard of if you had done some research. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but still, even if he was like biased, like he won 6 championships, that sucks. No, he's still pretty awesome. So more on but on the personal side, maybe.
Yeah, well, what would it have looked like? That's what I wonder. Like, you didn't see much about his family, about his like you obviously about his dad, but not about his kids. His kids show up in the last episode, and you're like, oh, right, he has kids.
Yeah,
I forgot.
I think it was hard to get him in an interview room to do that. I think it's the only reason why he did it. It's like, if you want to get an interview with Jordan, it's going to be about, he's going to craft this kind of documentary. So that's kind of the only way they could have had these like insightful kind of in-depth interviews is if Jordan says, this is what I'm doing, basically, which is fair. You're gonna kind of gotta, you have to kind of look at it through a little bit of a different lens and realize that Jordan has this curated, but it was a phenomenal documentary.
I feel like when you have that status, like not even as like an athlete, but like as a person, like if you have any level of say in it, like it kind of comes with the territory, I guess you could say, as far as like maybe something will be missed. Like I know there were people who pointed out how Sonny Vaccaro, who's like a Nike executive that he signed like the Nike deal with, wasn't really mentioned in it. But like I think for like the main parts of it, as far as like what we needed to know and like what we needed to actually like get the idea across of what that time looked like and what his greatness looked like, because it did still revolve around like the 98 season. It's just that every time something would come up, it would go back in time to something else. So I try to keep that in mind as I watched, even though there were some things maybe I would have wanted to see. But for the most part, and considering like what it was, especially revolving around that season, it was really done. It was well done.
Yeah, and like Bowen, you're right. Like this wouldn't have happened without it being done by Jordan. He wouldn't have gotten on someone else's doc. It was his doc, and since it was his doc, we got to see him look at an iPad and watch videos, and it made for a ton of amazing moments. So the fact that like we got to see him speak so candidly and while he's looking back on things made the whole series worth every minute. So it's true. I definitely like that part of it, but it would be interesting just to see like what like a documentary would look like if it had been like a real piece of journalism where they were like deep diving into it. But I think then you'd sacrifice, you wouldn't have Jordan in the doc, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to Marco's point, like of these other documentaries, like you guys know, like the All or Nothing soccer documentaries on Manchester City, and Sutherland had the Sutherland Till I Die.
Yeah.
Cycling team, Movistar had one. With those documentaries, they're going to be similar in the way that you're going in depth on these teams, but it's going to be curated by them as well, right? Because if you're granted this inside access, everything's not going to be put onto that documentary. Like it's just, there's no way. There's going to be some scenes that they want to cut. But I think it will open up the door to these other documentaries, but it will have the same problem of let's look at it through this different lens because it's been curated by the teams. But give me all of them, please, because these are amazing. Like they're like the most fun documentaries. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's I think wraps up episode 4. Next week we're gonna go into some awards from the NBA season because we and everyone else do not know when the season will come back. So we think it's a good time to go in depth on the All NBA teams, who the MVP is, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and all that fun stuff. So we'll see you guys next Monday.